American McGee's Alice. You know, I've always had a soft spot for this game. I probably first played it in 2009, a little bit late. This is the original, playing the demo. And at the time I thought the Quake 3 engine, I thought this was all we needed for games. Like, it felt feature complete. It had full 3D, and I really mean full 3D. It had blocks flying around, you know, animated blocks and stuff. As a matter of fact, when I became a high school teacher, I used to write the most masochistic or sadistic exams ever. It bothered me that in calculus, the concept of displacement, velocity, acceleration was so strongly tied to physics. I thought, okay, well, can we not have arbitrary gravitation fields, MC Escher style, where down becomes up? My students suffered a lot through that, but a lot of that comes down to my love of American McGee's Alice. Quite a while ago, I got my hands on the original design document, and there's a few things in here. For instance, did you know that when Alice is floating around, the number of butterflies she has around her indicates the number of jumps that she has left? Now, this is something that a normal person would intuit, but I don't intuit things easily. You know, the more I read this, the more I realized that Alice Madness Returns is a very different game to the game which was originally proposed. And I want to sort of look at a few details and basically just have some fun. Alice is the sole survivor of a tragic accident in which her family perishes in a house fire, and she believes that she is responsible for it, for which, you know, she spends some time in an asylum sort of piecing herself together. She gets out of the asylum and becomes, in Alice Madness Returns, a sort of servant to a psychologist called Dr. Bumby, Angus Bumby. The director seems dedicated to her recovery. In fact, he's not. Spoiler alert, by the way. He is in part responsible for her abnormal condition. She does not come to this clinic randomly, and a fragile, unbalanced, perhaps psychotic Alice serves his interests. He knows more about the fire that killed her family than the Board of Inquiry that declared it an accident, and he fears that a sane and strong Alice may uncover facts that he wants and needs to remain concealed. Bumby believes that Alice has no rational awareness of what really happened the night of the fire, but as he witnesses her work, he learns that Alice is a strong and perspicacious character. Despite his efforts, she has stripped away some of her unearned guilt and its accompanying neuroses. Though she has no reasoned suspicion that the fire was other than an accident, something tugs and pulls at her subconscious and makes her continue to pick at the congealing scab that covers the tragic and debilitating wound. Bumby probes Alice's growing awareness of the truth. He sends her on various errands in East London, all alleged to be related to his charity work among juveniles. A Salvationist mission, a doss house, an opium den, a seedy pub, the docks, a warehouse along the river, a slaughterhouse, etc. An assortment of conmen, prostitutes, thieves, seamen, drunks, and other typically East End characters feed into and play havoc with her visions, fantasies, nightmares, and psychoses. This is Bumby's plan. In Alice Madness Returns, it's basically an adventure game. You go around these different areas of Wonderland, and sometimes you go back into the real world, and then sometimes you go back into the game, and it's mostly just levels. Like, you do the level, okay, cool. But the original pitch was more of an open world sort of, you go here, you do a mission, you have a traumatic event which sends you into Wonderland, and then you come back, something like that. And as a matter of fact, if you look at old trailers, back when it was just called Alice 2.
Stop, killer! There she is!
There are hints of more things going on in the real world. We can see Alice running from police, doing stealth missions around London. But hey, I mean, this is the way it often goes. You have the pitch. I mean, okay, Alice Madness Returns was developed in 18 months with about $8 million. Now for me, $8 million is a life-changing amount of money, but for a game studio, $8 million is about 18 months of production time. If we look through here, a lot of these features are the same: double jump, float, all of that, sliding. Who remembers sliding? Favorite part of the game, by the way. But this is an interesting thing, swimming. So originally there were meant to be water volumes of varying density. The original idea was that there would be this very dense water through which Alice would swim, but then there would be less dense water on which Alice could walk, and you could sort of transition between these regions, and there were these like little sub islands that you could explore. That's not in the final game, but it's a very cool idea. Some things are in the final game but are a little bit adjusted, such as the shrink sense. Here it's called shrink sonar. So the idea is that when Alice is shrunk, she can see these little hints about where to go. Originally, that was meant to be a trigger pulse, like you'd press a button and that would set off. I find this interesting. In the original document, the ruin, that ruin residue, the thick oil that sort of damages you, is originally called doom, all capitals. Also in the 2.5D shadow levels, this is originally visualized as a sort of pinhole camera. So you would go into these rooms, you would see this portrait, and you would jump into the portrait and play the level. But originally there was meant to be this sort of pinhole camera in the center of the room, which is projecting that out onto the film. You come into this cave and there's this box in the middle of the room, that's the pinhole camera. And it says here, as Alice approaches the ornate box, it lights up and emits a humming sound. Also, here we have a description of the lock-on system and combat. And the document makes the note that combat is actually meant to be sort of slower paced in this game. And you can see that here with the lock-on system, because the controls here actually have like quick actions. Like you can just hit a button and it queues up a combo of events. This almost looks like Alice Tactics, And in the 2009 trailer for the game, they were demonstrating a combat system which looked similar to this. It was sort of slower paced. It was more based around enemy selection. Now here they have a description of some of the ways to mitigate difficulty. And as we can see here, the basic philosophy is that completing the game should be really easy, but then doing really well at the game should be really hard. Now this is a little bit suspicious, right? Because first up, the platforming is notoriously frustrating, and these alternate paths basically don't exist. There's something about Alice Madness Returns. It's a strangely linear game. The closest it gets to being non-linear is when you walk a path, turn around, and then some platform comes up, blocks the path you just went over, so you sort of are retreading the same territory in different directions, if that makes sense. Like some of the levels are like puzzles, but they're puzzles with only one solution. And the only thing I could think of in this case is that maybe there were time constraints and a lot of stuff had to get cut. Also, we have this thing called catnip, where the Cheshire Cat can clear combat areas for you. So you use some catnip, you get the Cheshire Cat all hyped up, and he goes and clears the combat. But we can see here The Cheshire Cat was originally intended to be a hint system, which ranged from not helpful at all to very directly helpful, in some cases just giving the complete solution. Also, something that I found interesting in this document is the concept of, like, I always wondered, when Alice dies, why does she become butterflies? Why, what is that? Turns out there's a reason for that, roughly. So the idea is that in Wonderland, damage is like mental damage, health is like mental health. And as stated here, if Alice sustains too much damage, she'll die. Our metaphor for it is linked to emotion, meltdown. Too much emotional damage will cause Alice to lose it, break down, and retreat. Other metaphors to inform this event are, emotionally shattered, destroyed, blowing one's top. Alice's head explodes, ? And this might be the most interesting part of this document. And if there was one bit where I was like, you know what, let's cut it back a bit, but make sure that we keep this in, it's the variety of death animations. Originally, Alice was intended to have multiple deaths depending on which enemy killed her. She could be crushed, like literally flattened. We have this exploding into a swarm of butterflies. This is basically the single death animation which is used in all cases. Arctic water turns into ice cube. Can't argue with that. Now this is interesting over here. Example, Queen's tentacles. Maybe the last detail I'll mention is that in the back we have descriptions of the characters, including some of the minor characters, and I just happened to come across this. These guys did their research. But we have some minor characters here, including a pure collector. So in the old ye olde Dickensian lingo, pure is actually the word for dog poo. The pure collector roamed the streets scooping the poop left by our canine friends, not for health and hygiene reasons, but for profit. Well, someone had to provide the tanners with enough doggy doo-doo for their bait. Interesting book. I thought I'd just chill, and have a little look through it. We're all mad here. The rallying call of HR departments across the world. But yeah, I really do like American Mickey's Alice, the whole video game series. I wish they got a sequel. That would have been so cool. I wish that, okay, here's a proposal. I'm busy. I've got like 30 different video series that I work on. But if you are a game developer and you want to make something in the style, the original spirit of Alice Madness Returns, here's a proposal. Alice Madness Returns X Grand Theft Auto, right? An open hub world, different missions you complete for different characters. You can go like, whatever they use for cars. You can go carjacking in Wonderland. Call it Grand Theft Tarts. You get chased by the card guards. That'd be pretty cool. And I guess this video is a little bit all over the place, but I want to share just one final memory that I have of Alice Madness Returns. And this, in my opinion, is the most genius, the most brilliant thing that the game did. There's a scene where Alice goes and visits her aunt, who's a working woman, but she's been assaulted by Jack Splatter. He's a pimp. And it's pretty dramatic, and he knocks out Alice. At the same time, the bar is burning down. So Alice is unconscious in a room where everything's burning. And then she is transported to Wonderland, to the icy tundra. And I think that's the most brilliant piece of... you've got a story. And the story is there's like the surface level story, which is like the facts and details, the exposition and all of that. that you digest in the dialogue, but then you've got the secondary story, which is the experience of playing the game. And in my opinion, this is one of the best examples of building an experience in the player's mind. Another little side tangent on that is everything sort of fits so well together. I was reading the book The Art of Alice Madness Returns, and one of the artists for that Tundra level was talking about the ship, which is frozen in the ice. You can sort of see it off in the background. At the end of the level, you go in and go in the ship. The artist was talking about how he was inspired by, I'll put the name up, I can't think of it off the top of my head. There was an English explorer who led an expedition basically through the North Pole, but the ship got frozen, and it was frozen in the ice for like a number of years. And everyone died. No one knows what happened to the explorers. That was the inspiration for the frozen ship in the tundra, according to one of the artists, and I think that comes through pretty well. And as a matter of fact, if you listen to the soundtrack for that level, and then you watch the HBO series The Terror, Season 1 is based on that story. It's the story with some supernatural elements mixed in there. And the soundtrack from that season, I would say, has a similar vibe to Alice Madness Returns. So I just think it's cool. The whole vibe of it, I really appreciate. And yeah, I can't think of a succinct way to end this. So cheers, all the best, and I'll see you again soon. Maybe we'll even do some programming. Who knows?